the foundation on which you're building your house would be the Amphibian Conservation Action Plan. And this house has many rooms with doors into, so you can allow interactions. But we're trying to identify who are the partners that are active in each of these different rooms. So each room would represent one of the topics that we need to activate, one of the actions that are needed for amphibian conservation. And of course, uniting everything and covering everything would be the Amphibian Survival Alliance. So that's one analogy. Another analogy that I was just thinking is, think of the Beatles. Probably everybody knows the Beatles, right? So the Beatles were 4 musicians, and each of them on his own was a very good musician. Each of them could actually do wonderful things. But actually, when they were together, it was much better. That's actually the revolution in music, in modern music. And actually, behind the Beatles, there was a 5th guy, which was coordinating them. So our role as the Amphibian Survival Alliance is to be that person, right? And to try to motivate all of you to work together like these 4 people and try to revolutionize amphibian conservation, try to mainstream amphibian conservation, and try to look for ways of interacting with all the different environmental conservation agendas that are around. And so, not to forget that if we really want the frogs, the salamanders, the Sicilians to be safe, we have to learn to interact with everyone. Not just talking about ourselves, but also talk with all the other people that are in all these different rooms in this wonderful conference. And finally, as we're building this, sometimes it might feel a little bit like we're sitting on top of you. You might feel a bit uncomfortable because it might look like we're trying to promote things that we didn't necessarily do, but don't take offense. We're not really trying to steal anything from anyone. Actually, what we're trying to do is promote amphibian conservation. And on the one hand, we're going to be standing on the shoulders of giants. And please always remember that if we're standing on top of you, it's because we're working on group. We're trying to build this large umbrella that will encompass everyone. So with that, I think we're going to finish the part of the session that is dealing with all these talks. And I'd like to invite everyone to now participate in a more interactive part of the session with questions and answers. The easiest is I'm going to invite all the speakers to come and sit here in the front, and then I'll invite everyone from the public to from the audience to just address questions, and we're going to try to answer them, and even from different perspectives. So we have somebody here from the public sector, somebody here from the private sector. There's people from different universities and different aspects. So I hope that we can then have a productive session, more interactive one. In addition, there's 2 other things I want to say very quickly. One is that in preparation for this large meeting, there's a volume of the journal Sapiens that was published. And one of the articles that was put together for this journal, in the section that was allocated for the species of mission, is actually an article about the amphibian crisis that we put together, so I'd like to read it. And I will also circulate a list, so if you can please write down your name, your email address, so we can be in touch with each and every one of you. Okay, so please, everyone that gave a presentation, can you come to the front, and then we can have a session of questions and answers.
great. Commander, would you like to come up?
So I don't know if anybody has any initial questions, thoughts, comments. I mean, there's a couple of microphones around, and then we can just answer here. Please, if you can just introduce yourself and the institution you work for, please.
Hello. My name is Mark Almeida. I work currently at the Helmholtz Research Center in Germany, and currently I'm working on a project called RACE. RACE means Risk Assessment of the Chytridiomycosis in European amphibian populations. And my special challenge is the science policy interface of this project. So we have partners in the UK, in Spain and Switzerland, and the problem is now we have in Europe that we have very loose regulations regarding amphibian trade issues. And I'm specifically talking about trade now, because trade is one of the issues which has presented as one of the threats. And even in Germany, in the middle of Germany, which is the main importer of exotic amphibians and reptiles in the world, next to Japan and the US, we have not tight regulations on this. So also, potentially, we have a spread of different or varying strains of the fungus within reptile fairs, exotic fairs. There's no disease control, there's no quarantine measures, there's no hygiene protocol, even in pet shops. And so I just want to present my, well, maybe expertise, because I'm working like 2-3 years on the amphibian trade now, but 15 years on the reptile trade in Southeast Asia. So I would like to share my knowledge and hopefully also have others to share their knowledge to probably get a good understanding and solution on maybe new regulations within Europe on the pet trade. Thank you.
Yes, I don't know if anybody if you want to comment a little bit on the pet trade or.
That's a really good comment. I totally agree with you. I think that international wildlife trade is one of the biggest elements in the room that we're least likely to look at is its economic. CITES meetings, what happened at the last COP, bluefin tuna, continuing to be fish. So there are definite issues to get over economically in that culture. So I think that there's a lot of rules and regulations that have to be in place, but nothing's going to happen. Those would be on paper. And in reality, there's some distance from the rules and regulations rather than what happens on the ground. So there's a lot of things to talk about there. A lot. It's really important topic.
I can just very briefly mention that in addition to this workshop, there's a motion that's been going to be presented to the Assembly, probably at least was scheduled for tomorrow. And this motion is actually touching on trade. So we thought it was important enough to consider trade, to mention that CITES and the World Customs Organization should actually consider amphibians on their own rather than continue considering just as bulk with many other things, because at the moment they're not even specified, they're just treated as bulk.
With respect to the disease that is responsible for some considerable number of amphibian population declines, chytridiomycosis, due to the amphibian chytrid fungus, there are new findings just coming out that from several different labs around the world that there's probably been a recombination event, because there are only particular strains of chytrid fungus that are responsible for amphibian declines. And chytrid fungus is extremely widespread. It's all over Asia, in China, Philippines, Korea, we know for sure. It is extremely common. And it doesn't seem to be causing any problem. In other places, it does cause a problem, and it's been a bit of a paradox. And the answer to this is only coming. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. There are particular strains that are dangerous. Now, and they need to be controlled because bullfrogs, American bullfrogs, are a primary vector, and they can spread all over the world. So, how to actually implement it is something we need to deal with. In some cases, I have been told that there's now a clear number of disease. I'm not sure in which countries or all over, but it's still extremely difficult to implement. In New Zealand, we looked into this. There's one exporter that sent lots of frogs to America, Australian tree frogs, and when we were trying to work with them, we were threatened with all sorts of legal action. So there needs to be legislation within countries, enforcement within countries, as well as among countries, and it's a big challenge. And Asia is probably the biggest issue. So I don't have the expertise, but we welcome your input into trying to come up with recommendations to resolve this problem.
Yes, with all comments. I would like to what our council expected after this workshop, because WNC and motion proposed, and the SAP is in place. So, would you expect, say, as in to step to adopt the protocol or
The motion is not to be discussed here. The motion was presented in the assembly, and it's been already in the systems, in the motion systems for in the webpage for a while. So that's not really. I mean, this is just in addition to what's happening here. So that's not related to this. The outcomes of this meeting is really, first of all, to let everybody know that there's a mixture of that we're making efforts to go from having just a purely scientific approach to the amphibian crisis to a more integrated approach. So as you see, we have now people from research, but also people from the public sector. We have somebody from the private sector, and we have a coordinating body. So I think just letting people know that we're going to that. And second, to let everybody know that there's this coordinating body, and so the Amphibian Sport Alliance, which this is something that's relatively new, and it's important that the people that are engaged with amphibian conservation are aware of this. Any, you'd like to have an additional comment, please? Any other questions, please?
My name is Nisa Kusmini from Indonesia. So this is not actually a question, I just like want to give you some picture of what happened in Indonesia, because I work in Indonesia. So the presentation that Greg gave is really very good, because Philippines is almost the same as Indonesia. We have this is an archipelago, so lots of islands. For Indonesia also we have lots of islands, and we have different species of island, especially in the western part and the eastern part is really different. And when I look at it, one of the pictures that you see the number of high number of species in Kalimantan, for instance, as you mentioned before, that it is higher in Kalimantan, the Sarawak and Sabah compared to the Kalimantan of Indonesia. And of course, it might be biased because Inners work there for a long time. But in Indonesia, actually, there's now an increasing participation of young people starting to do herpetological work, and they are already very interested. They don't really know how to tap into funding, and they don't really have a good knowledge of taxonomy and everything. So with this kind of thing, how do we raise the capacity building of young people? Because in Indonesia, it's really good for me. I think that we have people working in Java and Sumatra and other parts of the world. So very local people local in the university, and how do we raise the capacity building and get interest, and how can Amphibian Survival Alliance help in that? Thank you.
Actually, I think this may be an interesting point for several of the members of the panel to comment on. So,
yeah, that's a great question. Thanks so much. My general feeling is that the history of species discovery and by understanding the distribution of biodiversity across Southeast Asia is dominated by a few personalities. You mentioned Bobby Hurt as a great example. People who worked in a particular country for a long time, and they never crossed those political borders into the next country. They very seldom do. And I think we're all, the folks who are paying attention to accumulation of biodiversity and the number of species and amphibians right now, are all sort of feeling this anxiety. We need to front load the process of species discovery and do something really drastic. It's taken us 400 years to get to 7,000 species using the same techniques that Linnaeus used all the way back then. And something big really needs to change. And some of us feel pretty strongly that this integrated approach to species discovery, where we don't necessarily just trying to understand the distribution of biodiversity, we don't need to name all of those taxa. We need to detect that they're there. And then we have these redefined hotspots of biodiversity and new priorities for protected areas. And so I think it would actually be a really pretty simple process to get people together from all these countries, figure out what it's going to take to get the sampling, centralize the whole process, bring all those people together, and in a couple of years, we could have a revolution about our understanding of the distribution of biodiversity in Southeast Asia. I think that's actually a very tractable project. That it would just take a little coordination from everybody, and a lot of people work together. And that younger generation that you mentioned is really our hope for doing that.
Yep, I totally agree. I'm right in the midst of all these issues, and I think there really is, for us in the research realm, it really is more outreach and working with other, especially, I hate to say it, funding agencies. The only thing that's keeping me away from doing a lot more of this work is funding, frankly. And it's just not sexy to go out and find new species. It's not, it does get in the news, but you can't get funding for it. No one's going to give you money to go on an exploration fishing trip to find new species for us. Doesn't happen. Doesn't happen in my research, at least.
I sort of disagree there. I think that, I agree that we're actively funded to find a bunch of species and name them in taxonomic journals and go through that laborious process that we're going through. And I think if we all think about this in a really different way, grant agencies love deliverables, right? When they talk about the billions of dollars that they want to donate to a project, they want to know what the outcome is and what the product is. And putting species in ex situ conservation projects, for example, is a great way. They can get a certain amount of money and save a certain amount of species. And they can do the math and figure out how much money it takes per species. And so the question I want to know is, how many dollars does it take to discover and identify every one of these new species, or 90% of the species diversity across Southeast Asia? And I think if that was presented to funding agencies in that way, I think that they would go for it.
I guess the bigger issue is how do we get people in developing countries, how do we get students in the local universities and local schools more participating in detecting and campaigning for and having passion for and saving species. And these opportunities are slow to develop. I've tried it a few times, and often, for instance, Seoul National University and other universities in Korea, we do have the opportunity to host students from developing Asian countries. But that's not the answer. The answer is to form networks, to work more closely with people in each country, and that's one of the purposes we envision in putting together this workshop. So perhaps after the workshop, we can meet with you and anybody else interested. We want to continue these discussions. We're going to have dinner after the workshop, and we invite everybody who wants to come. It comes to one-on-one connections, and we want to. Much of biology is sort of dictated from, in a sense, from America and Europe, and we have to get people, ground root people at every level, starting very early, involved in order to have any hope at all of saving biodiversity in Asia and other developing countries. Anybody else have something to add?
Yes, especially systematics and taxonomy is usually a very systematic branch of science, like molecular ecology or evolution. That's absolutely right. And we agree with you. Basically, they're getting funding for field exploration, even the case of India, or any developing country, I think is very less. So the major, my suggestion maybe is that you have to make a proposal basically the unidentified, to identify the candidate species and to project in front of the administrators and funders. That's the strategy, rather than saying we don't know how many species we have in Indonesia or in any other part of the world. So basically, we have to make an initiative basically to understand what is our diversity, extreme diversity, and potential candidate species. That makes sense other than applying the grant for. Getting the grant for systematic is absolutely, it's not easy. It's a tough job. I hope you know much better than me. That's everywhere, especially in India, the same situation. You have a lot of money for anything, but no money for systematics.
예, 조금 다른 의미에서 대답할 수 있는데요. 일단 그 조언을 새로운 용 찾고